First story. Birth parents are married to each other, have full siblings. The author of the post is listed in the description. I was adopted at 3 months old. I had a dysfunctional family growing up, but I was cared for and loved. Both my adoptive parents passed away in separate car accidents. My dad when I was 17, and my mom 3 years ago when I was 24. I had a semi-open adoption, but my birth parents requested my adoptive parents stop sending them photos and updates about me when I was less than a year old. I had a vague idea of who my birth parents were. I grew up knowing their names, and I had several photos of them. I did a DNA test and was matched with 3 full siblings, which shocked me. I was always told they were young and that they barely knew each other and wanted to further their education. About 3 months ago, I decided to Google their names, and I found their social media. Turns out they are married to each other now, with 7 more children they had together. I stalked them on Facebook a bit, and it seems like they have a relatively happy life. I was shocked to find out I had 7 full siblings, and that my sister, who is closest in age to me, is actually only 11 months younger. I was even more shocked to find I have an older, full brother who was not adopted out, who is only a year and a few months older than me. I ended up reaching out to my birth mother via Facebook, telling her that I would love to get to know her, that I've had a great life, and that I have no expectations. She took a month to respond, and when she did, she said she was surprised that I reached out and to please not contact any of my siblings as they aren't aware of my existence. I didn't respond for a few days, but I ended up just asking her why she chose to give me up and why I never told anyone about me. She responded and said that I was a NICU baby. She and my birth father were 17 when I was born, and they weren't prepared to raise a disabled child. She said at the time they were under the impression that I would never live independently and that they weren't in a place to have a special needs child. I was again shocked. I definitely was always in the lower price tiles for growth until puberty, but according to my grandmother, by the time I was 8 months old, I was hitting all the markers for regular mental development. I have an MS in mathematics from a Tier 1 university. I was an athlete in high school, and I never had any issues in school beyond being really horrible in art class. I'm married, with a child. I'm a fully functioning adult with a successful career and a family of my own. And it hurts to know I was given up on because of the slight chance I wouldn't turn out perfect. Part of me feels like I missed out on a life with siblings. I was raised an only child, and that I could still have a chance to know them and love them, that my daughter would have a chance to have cousins. My youngest siblings aren't even in elementary school yet, and I could have a normal sibling bond with them, or at least be part of their lives from a young age, and I wish that I had that chance. I'm not angry at my birth parents for giving me away. I don't hate them. I'm hurt, but I'm not angry. I am angry that they've requested I not reach out to my adult siblings, and I'm considering doing it anyway. Comments from OOP that provide updates and more context. December 31st, 2020. A bit too late, as we have already met in person. I've discovered many of them know people I know, and after friending my sisters on Facebook, we actually have real-life mutual friends, which is the craziest thing. Perhaps I'm jumping in too fast, and I'm guarding my heart the best I can. December 31st, 2020. I specifically mentioned adult siblings in my original post. I never had any intention of reaching out to my underage biological siblings without birth parents' consent. December 31st, 2020. We ended up meeting up in a park with our children, all masked, later than day. 2 of my biological brothers were there. My older biological brother showed me poems and essays he wrote growing up, most titled some variation around the sisters who went away. It broke my heart, and he said he never stopped thinking about me. He found out about me via our biological grandmother and our other biological sister who was adopted out several years after I was. I had breakfast outside with the same 2 biological brothers this morning. We discovered that my biological grandmother and father live in the same neighborhood as me, and I met them over Zoom. I waved to them from the porch on the drive home, and my daughter did some very impressive cartwheels for them this afternoon in their front yard. My biological grandmother blew kisses and cheered my daughter on. She's now making her a quilt. I have plans to meet my biological sister, who is only 11 months younger than me, tomorrow, along with a sister who is exactly 2 years younger to the day. We have the same birthday. I've now had contact with all my biological siblings that are over 18. My biological sister, who is 2 years younger, was also adopted out when she was 6 months. She is a below-the-knee amputee, and our birth parents felt unable led to care for her. We all grew up within 40 km, 25 miles of each other. Both my sisters that I am meeting tomorrow work in the same industry as me. I went to the same university as my older brother at the same time, though I don't recall ever meeting him. It's so odd to see your face in the faces of other people. I never imagined that they would want to love and know me, and according to my biological grandmother, miss me every year. I honestly don't care if I never have a relationship with my birth parents. I understand a lot of this is very new, and I don't entirely know if it will all end well, but I have no regrets reaching out. My adoptive parents gave me a beautiful life. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and I miss them every day. It breaks my heart that they never got to meet my daughter or partner. I know this won't make up for the loss of them, but I do feel like I have the chance at an extended family. December 31st, 2020. My birth parents on 2 separate occasions chose to adopt out their 2 biological children who had any chance of facing difficulty. I now know my young biological sister and I were adopted out because we had less than desirable handicaps. Myself, I was slightly developmentally delayed physically. Until like 2, my sister required a below-the-knee amputation several months after birth. My parents gave us both up for adoption and kept the children they deemed fit. I really doubt this is not a case of ableism. Both my biological sister and I are actually mathematicians. Clearly, we have the ability to grow up as almost entirely normal individuals. We live in a country that has a very, very strong social safety net and public health care. I highly doubt they wouldn't have qualified for government assistance. I'm not so much upset about my own adoption as I am for that of my younger biological sister. It was already 6 months old when she was adopted out, and was adopted out into an extremely abusive family from what it sounds like. Granted, I've only heard secondhand from my biological brother. December 31st, 2020. My birth parents apparently married at 18 but had 3 children before they were married. December 31st, 2020. That clearly isn't the case with me. After speaking with my adoptive grandmother, from what she understands, that was never the case. I never heard anything like that growing up from my own parents. I have a strong intuition that my birth mother is lying. I was developmentally delayed for a very short period of time. I performed at normal and above average levels the rest of my life. I'm average in height now. I have a successful career, live independently, and have a family of my own. My birth parents wouldn't have had to have spent the bulk of their income, as we live in a country with a very, very strong social safety net. I'm not from the United States or Canada. December 31st, 2020. My feelings about my own birth parents are mine to have, and I am 100% within my right to state them. It's wrong to constantly push out children when you chose to adopt out 2 out of 4 of them in a 4-year period. I don't feel bad about saying that. I have empathy for parents of disabled children in countries where resources are not available to them. That is not the case at all in the country in which I live. I don't think people who give up disabled children are evil and heartless. I do think people who constantly have more and more children, when they're children themselves pretty much, and then give up the 2 they think are defective, are wrong. Update. I've now met all of siblings. What originally turned out to be 7 siblings turned into 8 when I learned I have a full sister who was also an adoptee. I have spent every day for the past 9 with one of my siblings. I have 3 adult brothers and 2 adult sisters. My sister, who is also an adoptee, reunited with them 2 years ago. You would never know she didn't grow up with them. The 5 of them mesh so seamlessly. I would be dishonest if I said they felt like strangers to me. I feel like I've known the 5 of them my entire life in some ways, despite only a bit more than a week having passed. They call themselves first batch, and they call our younger siblings second litter. It is funnier and more catchy in our language, haha. I am now a part of the first batch text thread and social media group. It is odd and insane. They're unfamiliar to me in almost every way, but it's more like seeing a best friend after being torn apart by war or tragedy. My oldest biological brother is 29. My younger biological sister and I are both 27. Thought I will be 28 in a few weeks. My younger sister, who was also adopted out, is 25. She will be 26 on the same day I turn 28. The twins, who are the youngest of my grown siblings, are 23. We all have winter birthdays. I cannot imagine what my birth parents went through. My birth mother had 6 children between the ages of 15 and 21. I understand why she adopted out 2 of her children. I cannot imagine the weight on her shoulders. 6 of us are adults, and then there is a considerable age gap. 3 of my siblings are minors, a brother who is 12 and 2 under the age of 6. My birth father arranged through my biological grandparents for me to meet the 3 of them 4 days ago. My youngest biological sister is 4 years old. She is the cutest little girl, aside from my own daughter, I've ever met. She came up to me, tugged me down to her level, and then touched my hair. She said, "Do you know you have curly hair?" I nodded, and she told me that now we were twins, because we were with only sisters with curly hair. I cried and laughed. My youngest brother is younger than my own daughter. My 12-year-old biological brother hugged me and cried a lot. We are the only 2 of 9 who have brown hair. The rest have shades of blonde and strawberry. He and I are strikingly similar. I'll say this again. It is so odd to see your own face in the faces of others. It's never something I've had, and in the last week and few days, I have been overwhelmed by the shock of sharing mannerisms and features with those around me. I met my birth father. He explained that he was young and he thought he did the right thing, and he's happy to see I turned out well. He cried more than he spoke. Last night, I video chatted with the first batch siblings, and I met 3 of my first cousins via Zoom. They are a set of siblings, my biological aunt's children, a female cousin and her younger brothers, all close to age as me. They were born and raised in North America, with an American father. Thought one of my male cousins lives in our country. He married a girl from here, and they have daughter the same age as mine. I will be meeting him and his wife on Monday. My female cousin and I look so alike, I cried when I saw her face on the screen. My siblings and I are all very similar looking. We are clearly related. However, my cousin and I have the same face and laughter. It was so odd to hear an American accent out of my own face. This set of cousins is very close with my siblings. My female cousin is a flight attendant, cabin crew. This is the only other career I ever seriously consider besides my own. It is also the same job as my own husband. These little coincidences and likenesses are the things I've been missing my entire life. She has a maths degree. She and I have texted all day today. Apparently, it is a joke among our extended family that her and her brothers look like they belong to my biological parents instead of their own, and I understand why. All 3 of them are brown-haired, darker-eyed versions of my own biological siblings, and in this way I look more like them. It is so strange to see my face in the faces of others. This very long post summarized. Part of me is a bit bitter about the years lost, having siblings near my age to brave the strange world through the lens of childhood with. Summer holidays in the States with cousins, one who shares my face and dreams. I did have a wonderful mother and father, and I could never regret the life I've had. Grandparents, siblings, and cousins are all things I've never had until now. I have a reason to go to America after COVID. I'm going to meet my cousin in person next week, something I never thought I would say. My husband is excited, too, to have a big extended family. We are considered very young in our country to have kids, and now we know other young parents. Comments from OOP that provide updates and more context. January 8th, 2021. Multiple relatives have said she's ecstatic how well things are going between my siblings and myself, but she has no desire to ever have contact with me. My biological family has pretty much reintegrated my biological sister, who was also adopted out back into the family. They first reunited a few years ago. My biological sister is extremely close with all of them. She even lives with our other biological sister who was not adopted out. Her and my birth mother attend the same family gatherings, but they do not speak, and it works for them. They have perfunctory contact out of necessity and shared loved ones. They have no personal relationship, and my sister respects that our birth mother does not want to get to know her. I imagine if things unfold in a similar way for me as they have my biological sister, my birth mother and I will have a similar relationship. I appreciate how hard all of this must be for her, and I want to respect her request for no contact as much as I can, fostering a relationship with the rest are our shared family. I was so angry initially, then I remembered what it was like to be 17, and I am just sad now. January 8th, 2021. From what it sounds like, she has grieved the loss of giving us away, and she's happy with her life the way it is without opening up those old wounds. From what my biological sister says, the one who is also an adoptee, our birth mother is never rude or unkind. Whenever someone crosses a line in regards to forcing her to interact with my biological sister, our birth mother states openly that she isn't comfortable being part of the conversation, removes herself from the scenario, but she never tries to stop other people from talking about things or inviting my biological sister to family gatherings. January 10th, 2021. My sister, who was adopted out, already had a paternity test done when she found our birth family. I matched with 3 of my full siblings as full siblings on an ancestry site. I was adopted out because I was a preemie, my birth mother had an extremely difficult pregnancy with me, and my birth parents were told I would have severe developmental delays, which wasn't the case. My birth parents were 17 and already had a child when I was born. My younger sister was adopted out after she needed an amputation, and my birth parents felt they weren't the right people to raise her. They were only 19-20 with 2 children and already adopted one out. There was definitely ableism in their decisions. January 10th, 2021. I think we all process this game in different ways. For her, this may just look like what trying to live healthy looks like. I actually had dinner with her, my birth father, and my husband last night. It was super pleasant. We didn't discuss anything related to our familial relationship, but we talked about hairstyles, television shows, and the like. When I discussed anything related to adoption, she stayed quiet but smiled, and my brother father and I spoke about it. Very excited to be a part of this family. I think age definitely plays a factor. Thank you so much for your kind words. Wishing the best for you and your family. Update. My daughter had her 3rd play date with her auntie, uncle, 1st and 2nd cousins. Never in my life did I dream my child would have familial playmates in the same age group. I was always a bit of a loner. It was hard to make friends. I lost both my adoptive parents quite young and had no living adoptive relatives. My husband is an only child. I never dreamed of an extended family for myself or my daughter. She now has living great-grandparents who lived in our neighborhood. I'm never going to discredit the love my adoptive parents had for me. They were amazing. However, my childhood was dysfunctional and heartbreakingly lonely. My life has been lonely. Now I feel like I really would have people there for me, for my child if anything crazy were to happen. A support system. Update. Things are wonderful. I have siblings, and now at this point I can't believe there was a life before them. I almost forget sometimes. I just went on holiday with my older brother and one of my cousins, birth family, who lives in America. Not even a first cousin like a first cousin once removed. That is how far of an extended family I have now. It is like another life. In regards to my birth mother and I, we hardly speak, but we are around each other often, and she is always smiling and kind, and she is a wonderful grandmother to my 2 children. My sister, who was also adopted out, just got married. Okay, next story. Tifu sleeping with my former boss in front of her husband. My former boss contacted me a few days ago with an unusual request. She wanted to know if I was interested in sleeping with her while her husband watched us. I said I was the wrong guy for the job, but she disagreed and said I was the perfect guy based on a random one-night stand we had years ago, before she remarried. She said her new husband wanted to watch her fuck another guy and she was into it. I agreed to discuss the possibility in person, especially when she offered to pay for dinner. I forgot how attractive she was until I saw her face to face. She introduced me to her new husband, who wanted me to understand that all he wanted was to be an observer in the bedroom. He made it sound like the worst-case scenario was that I would have sex, which I believed, so yeah, I said yes. Fast forward to the fucking. A couple of days had now passed since I said yes. I was in the missionary position when I heard snoring and farting coming from the so-called observer. The husband passed out at some point, but obviously not quietly, which affected my concentration on the sex because the snoring was distracting and the farting was disgusting. My ex-boss apologized on her husband's behalf before grabbing the box of tissues next to the bed and aggressively hurling it at her unconscious husband. Aim was off. Tissue box missed the target, prompting my ex-boss to hysterically scream her husband's name over and over into my ears while I was still laying pipe and trying to pretend that absolutely nothing weird was happening. The husband eventually woke up after my ex-boss managed to scream his name at the top of her lungs. Cue all-out war. My ex-boss called her husband Rudy for falling asleep. The husband said he had a long day at work. My ex-boss scoffed and said he had no clue what a long day at work looked like because what he did in one day was nothing compared to what she had to do every day as an independent businesswoman. The husband said he had zero energy for another boss bitch speech. My ex-boss looked at me and said her husband had zero energy on a permanent basis. I asked both of them if they wanted me to stop fucking and give them privacy because I was awkwardly thrusting in silence while listening to them. My ex-boss said I should ask her husband since the whole thing was his idea. The husband unexpectedly slapped my butt on his way towards the bedroom door and said I should come and call it a night. I didn't come, but I did call it a night when I realized that my desire to get away from my ex-boss and her husband outweighed my desire to get off. One one-night stand should have been enough, but I just had to come back for more, which I now regret. Update, 11 days later. So, there I was, face to face with my former boss and her flatulent husband once again. I agreed to meet them at the same restaurant as the last time because the free food was the only good thing I remembered. The purpose of the meeting, according to my former boss, was to clear the air following what happened. A phone call or a message or no communication at all would have been more than acceptable for me because I just wanted to move on. But my ex-boss insisted on restoring peace in person. I eventually said yes. The husband was in the men's room when I showed up for the meeting, which made me laugh a little on the inside because it seemed like an unintentional nod to how active his ass was during our previous interaction. My ex-boss thanked me for agreeing to meet with her and said her husband would join us soon. Meanwhile, she apologized for how unfortunate things turned out when we had sex before telling me that she had been brainstorming ways to improve the experience for next time. The husband emerged from the men's room at that moment and greeted me with an awkward fist bump and an unspoken "hello again," while his wife was trying to convince me to accept another invitation into their bedroom. She persuaded me to at least hear her out before I said yes or no. Her plan was to pivot her approach in the bedroom and embrace the dominant position during sex because she believed her husband would be less likely to fall asleep again if he was watching her put on a show and take control. My ex-boss paused at that point and looked at her husband like that was his cue to swallow his sushi and add to what she was saying. The husband pointed his chopsticks at me and said he expected more energy from a young guy, but based on what he observed while he was still awake, I was fucking his wife the same way he fucked his wife whenever he's more in the mood to masturbate. I said having sex with another man's wife while the man was in the room was like trying to poop comfortably while a random person was watching. The husband asked if I made moaning noises when I pooped. I said my moans mid-poop was dependent on how hard I had to push to unclog my colon. The husband said I might need to start pretending that I'm pushing as hard as possible when I sleep with someone because I never made a sound when I was intimate with his wife, which apparently contributed to his struggle to stay awake. I said pretending to poop during sex was sound advice coming from a guy who was unable to stop farting while I was fucking in front of him. My ex-boss pushed her plate away and said she lost her appetite listening to us. I said I didn't think I was sexually compatible with my ex-boss and her husband and suggested that they get another guy for the job. My ex-boss pointed out that the two of us were very sexually compatible when we had our one-night stand prior to her meeting her husband. I said I wouldn't call that sexually compatible since she was my boss back then and both of us were drunk. The husband said now he lost his appetite too. I said I had someone in mind that might be perfect for what they want. The husband sarcastically asked if it's another young employee his wife hooked up with. I said it was one of my more sexually experienced friends. My ex-boss said if it's not me, then it's no one. The husband encouraged his wife to at least allow me to provide more information about my friend before instantly calling off the whole thing. The information I provided prompted my ex-boss and her husband to agree to meet my friend. I contacted my friend the following day and explained the situation. He became interested as soon as I showed him photos of my ex-boss. I shared his contact details with my ex-boss with his permission and thought that would be the end of my involvement in this circus. Little did I know that my friend would call me a few days later to ask me why the fuck I never warned him that the husband had a pit bull. I said I didn't know. My friend said he had to fuck my ex-boss in front of the husband and his hellhound. I asked my friend if the pit bull did anything to hurt him. He said the dog barked from time to time, and then the husband would either shush the dog or translate and tell my friend what the dog wanted him to do or not do during sex. I was at a loss for words. My friend said the husband slapped his butt when he finished and called him a good boy. It sounded so ridiculous I was struggling not to laugh. However, I did feel bad for my friend because I could relate. My friend said he would have punched the husband if the pit bull was not in the picture. I apologized for introducing him to my ex-boss and her husband. My friend thanked me for the trauma and said, "Bye, bro." I decided to do what I should have done after my last post and blocked my ex-boss. She's crazy, but I think she somehow married someone even crazier. I'm still working on a way to make my friend like me again. New update. 8 days later. For the record, the fuck up here was telling my roommate everything and expecting it to stay between us. My roommate saw my parents in person for the first time a few days ago. My mom and dad were dropping off some of my belongings. My roommate was high in his room when my parents showed up. I made him promise me that he would avoid interacting with my mom and dad because he was weird enough without the drugs. All my belongings were packed in boxes inside my dad's car. I urged my mom and dad to make themselves comfortable in my living room while I grabbed my stuff from the car. When I returned with my belongings, I noticed my mom and dad looked uncomfortable. My mom beckoned me to come closer and then lowered her voice to almost whisper level when she spoke. She said my roommate appeared in the background and awkwardly waved at them from a distance before saying he would never share his wife with another man if she looked like my mom. I connected the dots and realized what had happened. My roommate noticed an older couple in our apartment and automatically thought my parents were my ex-boss and her husband, meaning he must have been Jesse Pinkman high. My dad said he was going to punch my roommate in the face if he saw him again. I apologized on behalf of my roommate and explained to my parents that my roommate was not himself due to the prescribed medication he was using. My dad said he wanted an explanation and an apology from my roommate. I looked at my mom for help, hoping she would read my mind and tell my dad to let it go. But she did nothing. I knocked on my roommate's door moments later and confronted him. He seemed confused as fuck when I informed him that the people in the living room were actually my parents and not the people he remembered from my story. I made it clear to my roommate that my dad was expecting him to explain himself and apologize. My roommate said okay. I said not okay, not yet, not until we agreed on what he was going to tell my parents because I didn't want my mom and dad to find out about my recent experience with my ex-boss and her husband. My roommate and I quickly rehearsed his explanation and apology with the words I was feeding him. It was simple. All he had to do was say sorry for what he said and blame it on the meds in his system. I said my mom would understand because if pharmacies were people, my mom would be one of them. As soon as my roommate approached my parents, he went off script and apologized to my mom and dad for confusing them with the businesswoman who had sex with me in front of her sleepy husband. He also gave my dad permission to punch him because he wanted to know what a punch in real life sounded like. It was a lethal dose of cringe. I encouraged my roommate to go back to his room, but he went to the bathroom instead while humming what I later found out was Colors of the Wind from the animated Pocahontas movie. Random. My dad looked at my mom and asked her if she still thought it was too much to low-key pack a Bible with my belongings. I made up an excuse to get rid of my parents and avoid unpacking the ex-boss husband situation that I literally cannot seem to escape. My life has become a bad comedy. If all of you never hear from me again, I'd consider that a positive outcome. Commenter. My mom would understand because if pharmacies were people, my mom would be one of them. Fucking LOL. Commenter. Why would you tell your unstable roommate in the first place? How do you like these stories? Write your opinion in the comments. Let's get 1,000 subscribers on this channel. Love you.